In today's world of market volatility and uncertainty, your retirement plans need to be front and center. With ever-changing tax laws, healthcare worries, and an unpredictable stock market, don't overlook the vulnerability in your retirement planning. Protecting your family and estate will be difficult with shifting policies in Washington. It's more important than ever to keep an eye on retirement.
Hi, and welcome into Eye on Retirement, the weekly show that keeps you in the know about all things retirement. I'm your host and financial advisor, Rick Everett. And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome in. If you're one of our many regular viewers, welcome back. We've assembled a full complement of panelists for this episode to include from Market Advisory Group, financial advisor, Julie Newton. Welcome in. Market Tax Services, CPA Pat Dougherty. Welcome in. And from Market Medicare Advisors, Trey, Basa. And from Eidelman Law Firm, estate planning attorney, Devin, Seward. Panel, thank you for being with us. Julie, before the show, we were talking about retirement situations that were a little different from what we normally talk about on Eye on Retirement. And you mentioned you have a client whose situation, although different from the folks you normally talk about, probably isn't all that uncommon.
It's interesting because no matter how common or how unique the situation may seem like, usually there's somebody out there experiencing something very similar. In this case, Steve was living with his girlfriend, Emma. He'd been divorced for a while. He was living with Emma, and they lived in a house that was entirely in her name. So he didn't have any equity in that home, even though he paid rent, he paid utilities, those kinds of things. So his name wasn't on the deed, so he had no real stake in that property.
So what would happen in a situation like this for Steve if Emma were to pass away?
Well, that's where the problem became tricky, because potentially if something were to happen to her, he may not have a home to live in anymore. And so, it was a matter of figuring out how best to take care of his immediate situation in terms of making sure things were under control with the living situation. But there were no wills. There were also no power of attorney documents, no trust, nothing like that, no legal foundation whatsoever.
So as an advisor, Julie, how did you navigate this situation?
Well, the best way to navigate is to bring in the entire team. So the first stop had to be speaking with someone from the estate planning team to make sure that we had the documents in place, or at least had a plan for what was going to happen in the situation if one of them were to pass away.
Devin, Seward with Eidelman Law Firm, you're one of our attorneys. It seems like it ought to be fairly easy to sort this one out. A few simple estate planning documents, and Steve and Emma are on their way, happily ever after.
And that's what we always hope for, Rick. But in this case, the document side of it might have been more straightforward. But this time it was the people side, the family aspect. In this case, family harmony is key. And so even though Emma, ultimately owns the home outright, she's the sole owner, I have to kind of navigate with her and help her do that balancing act between Steve's wishes, and the children's wishes. And she's going to want the best outcome for all of them, but ultimately she gets to make that decision. And so as an attorney, we wear a lot of different hats, and that means, there's a lot of different roles that we play. And sometimes it's litigator, taking people to court. Sometimes it's negotiator, figuring out the best deal for our client. And in this case, it was almost like I had to be the family therapist and talk to them about how they feel and everyone, what's the best outcome for everyone involved. And so sometimes, you're going to want to bring in the kids in that situation and talk to Emma and see how everyone's feeling and find a result that works for them. And then on the legal side of it, it's a type of situation where you can give Steve a life estate, or you can make him a joint tenant with the kids. And so that part of it's pretty easy, but finding out what they really want and their wishes can be the hard part in that situation.
Now, many times I hear attorneys referred to as counselor, so that would have been apropos in this situation. When you're dealing with a situation like this where you've got two people cohabitating, one person owns the home, that person has children, it makes it a little bit more of a sticky wicket. Is this where a trust would come into play and be most beneficial?
And yeah, that is absolutely another outcome in this situation is you could put that home in a trust, and within the trust agreement, you could get, you could say that Steve, give him the right to live in that property for the rest of his life. I mean, because that seems like the most certain outcome that everybody wants is, he's been paying rent and expenses on it, and he's been dating Emma. And so it makes sense for him to live in that home, and you can put that in the trust agreement, and that'll dictate how that plays out.
Now, people might be sitting out there watching and saying, well, if Steve and Emma were married, this wouldn't be a problem. But there are situations where people are actually married, where the home is in one name, but yet no safeguards have been taken to make sure that the other person would be okay if that person passed.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I deal with all the time that, if only one spouse owns the home, there has to be a document or a way to transfer that to the other spouse, and then to their kids. And so if they only have a will, then that's going to go through probate. But it's another example of they can put that home in the trust, and then the surviving spouse will become the co-trustee, and they'll become the manager of the home.
Let's look at a scenario where you have Steve and Emma as an example. They had not had a visit with an estate planning and attorney. The house is in Emma's name. Emma passes away. Where could that leave Steve?
I mean, potentially, that's going to pass to the kids. It's going to pass however Emma's will plays out, or if she doesn't have a will, then it's going to go to her blood heirs or issue, which are her children, and Steve is left out in the cold, so to speak. And so, I mean, that would be a very bad situation for Steve, and it'd kind of be up to the good graces of the children whether they allowed him to live there or not.
When it comes to retirement planning, and particularly in the estate planning aspect, there are a lot of intricacies that need to be addressed to make sure that you have the plan in place that meets your desires both now and after you pass. Do you have a whole team looking out for your best interest in retirement planning? If not, what piece of the puzzle might you be missing? At Market Advisory Group, we practice a holistic approach to retirement planning, from the financial and investment aspects to tax planning, as well as Medicare advising, and as you've just heard, estate planning. And we provide all of these services under one roof for your convenience. If you'd like to set up a complimentary, no-obligation consultation, operators are standing by right now to take your call at 316-252-8707. And be sure and check out our website at ionretirement.com. There's more to this story, and we'll have that for you right after this.
When people work with Market Advisory Group, they get a feel of sense of family. There's a lot of relationships that are made and going on in this conference room, and we really take a lot of pride in that and a lot of satisfaction in that.
Every client we work with, we make a custom-made plan to fit them and help reach their goals in life. Another thing that makes us unique is we want to meet regularly with our clients and have reviews.
Market Advisory Group, we have a process, and the process we take people through is first to understand what they have, understand who they are, and then we put together an income plan for them and show them how they can look forward to retirement and not look, though retirement is going to be a stressful time. It needs to be a stress-free time.
A few unique features of working with Market Advisory Group is holistic in-house financial consultants. We've got an in-house CPA, Joshua, an in-house estate planning attorney, Gerald, an in-house Medicare advisor, Bill. We rely on all of those professionals for, again, additional service within our consultative process, making sure that we've got the advice and the expertise behind the recommendations that we make.
You know, as an advisor, I'm not there to sell them one way or the other. I'm there to educate them, to let them know what their choices are. Then I try to help them make the right choice where they can save money and feel confident in their decision.
Absolutely the best part of my job is getting a stack of paperwork from somebody and they don't know what to do, and then I can turn around and give them back a tax return, but also to be able to explain what they can do next year that will give them a better answer than what they had this year.
When we've got clients that are calling and they need to help out a child or need to help out a grandchild or need to help themselves out and they're in a situation they didn't expect to be in, I really relish the opportunity to help them through that, help them make the educated decisions in somewhat stressful situations, because a lot of folks don't have that type of counsel.
We meet with so many people one-on-one in this office that don't ever end up becoming a customer or doing business with us, and that's okay. But when they leave our office, we know that we've helped them either get some answers to some of the questions they had or get some clarity on maybe their own path.
But one of the things that we hear all the time is, I wish I would have met you guys 10 years ago, because how much further could I be down the road? Well, Johnny Appleseed said, you know, when's the best time to plant a tree? 10 years ago. When's the second best time? Today. And so if we can help people today going forward, that just brings an incredible amount of comfort and excitement for us to come to work every day.
Hi, and welcome back into Eye on Retirement. In our last segment, we were visiting about Steve and Emma, who have been together for a number of years but never married. And they hadn't created anything to protect one another in the event of one of their deaths. After a conversation with Devin from Eidelman Law Firm, one of our estate planning attorneys, they set up their estate documents. So Julie, I ask you now, what was the next step?
The next step, the conversation turned to a discussion of the pre-tax money. In this situation, Steve had a very large, significant IRA, and the problem was that about 50% of that was in cash. So we've seen that a lot lately. People in their reactions, especially to 2022 market volatility, have gone to cash just as sort of a protection. So the thing that happens the most is, you know, a lot of advisors will advise, you know, stay in, you know, just stay, take this wait and see kind of approach. And with that wait and see kind of approach, it makes the investor very uncomfortable and they start to get a little worried. And so as that market volatility continues to happen, then people have that knee-jerk response and they'll move a bunch of money to cash. And then, of course, that money is not working for them anymore. And, you know, that it starts to become a concern for them.
I know that at Market Advisory Group, Julie, we create plans that take market downturns into consideration. Shouldn't their other advisor have been doing that also?
Well, in theory, yes, that's exactly how that should go. But unfortunately, oftentimes advisors just, you know, they say, set it and forget it kind of approach, with the idea being that what stocks go up must, or go down must come back up. And so, you know, hold, wait and see. But if you are a retired investor, that's not very comfortable because that's your life savings. You know, that's what's supposed to get you through retirement. And so people start to become concerned and they start looking for someone who can kind of help them stabilize what they have.
I think it's probably a natural reaction for people when they see their life savings, their nest egg, just on a continual descent. It's almost like a human reaction, fight or flight, and the flight is to put it in cash.
That's so true that, you know, part of the problem is that right now we're seeing inflation that we haven't seen in 10, 20, 30 years. And so, you know, people don't realize necessarily that corporations are experiencing the same kind of inflation that they are. And so, you know, cost of materials to produce things has gone up. And so, you know, those items that people are buying cost more because the cost to produce has gone up. And so, you know, because people are buying less, prices are going up. And we have this sort of stagnant kind of thing in terms of how corporations are making money with selling items. And so the end result is companies aren't paying what they are, stocks aren't doing as well, and it's just sort of this vicious cycle that keeps, the investor from seeing the kind of returns they've seen in the past.
So what you're saying is, correct me if I'm stating this wrong, but you're saying that companies are spending more on materials, but they're actually selling less products.
Right, because in an inflationary situation, people tend to tighten the purse strings, and they're buying fewer things than they were before. So it creates this paradox where it seems like things ought to be doing better, but unfortunately they're not. And so, people have those kinds of knee-jerk reactions, move it all to cash, and then the money's not working for them, not growing. And so they see especially if they're taking money out of the portfolio already, so they see their balances start to dwindle with those withdrawals, and yet they're not replacing it because they've got 50% or whatever in cash.
So the great thing about cash is cash doesn't lose any money. Okay.
That's true.
The bad thing about cash is that cash doesn't make any money, or if so, it's a minuscule amount. How do you, as an advisor, Julie, counter those moves to cash as a safe harbor?
It all starts with the foundation. Basically what we want to talk to people about is, what do you really want your retirement to look like? What are your hopes, your dreams, the things that you're going to do? And then from there, we start to put a plan together to kind of figure out, okay, are we planning for each piece of this? Are we planning for the tax piece? And making sure that they're able to do what they want to do. Because the worst thing that you can say to someone is, I'm sorry, you don't have the money to, take the vacation that you want to take, to go to Europe or wherever, or even, you have to make a decision between buying something you need and, things that you have to pay for. So it's kind of a balancing act to make sure we're meeting the hopes and dreams that people have in their retirement.
So in an ideal world, when you bring a client in and you've met, you've had the consultations, it's been determined it's a good fit, how often do you like to meet with your financial clients throughout the course of a year?
Usually during the first year, the plan is to meet quarterly. But then beginning in year two, oftentimes it's at least twice a year. Sometimes there's the more need to meet more often, to do a little more planning, especially, with things like taxes and that kind of thing. Also, if you've got someone who's getting ready to turn 65, they're going to start their Medicare, then you've got to meet more frequently just to make sure that you're taking care of all of those things.
Do you have an entire team looking out for your best interest in retirement planning? And if not, why not? At Market Advisory Group, we practice that holistic approach to retirement planning, from the financial advice side to estate planning, Medicare advising, and tax planning. And we do this all under one roof for your convenience. If you'd like to set up a complimentary, no-obligation consultation, give us a call right now. Operators are standing by at 316-252-8707. Again, 316-252-8707. We'll be back to put a wrap on this show right after this.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have by running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no-obligation, full-blown financial review today.
Welcome back into Eye on Retirement as we put a bow on this show as we continue our discussion with Steve and Emma. The focus turns now to taxes, Julie. Were there any unique circumstances with their situation that made taxes a challenge, as if they're not already?
Always a challenge. So Steve had concerns that if something were to happen to him, that Emma wouldn't be able to make the repairs or upkeep of the house. And so naturally from there, the discussion moved into let's plan for her future, but still planning for his children's future. So he wanted to make sure with that significant IRA that he had that he was leaving some to Emma for those housing concerns, but also to his own children.
So, Pat Dougherty, CPA with Market Tax Services, how do you address taxes in a situation like this? And was all of the money that they'd been working with pre-tax?
Yes, all of it, all of his IRA was pre-tax.
Okay.
And that brings up an issue because since they're not married, Emma is going to have to take the money out over 10 years. And so are his kids. And that could be a problem with that big of money. Also, if he lives past 73 and starts having to take required minimum distributions, he's going to have to start paying tax on that money. Even if he doesn't need it to live on, he's going to have to take it out and pay tax on it.
How can they hedge then? How can they hedge in a way that's going to protect everyone?
Well, that's where tax planning comes in.
Share with us.
This is somewhat of a unique situation because when you do tax planning like that, when you're trying to move money from pre-tax to not post-tax, taxes are going to have to be paid up front, okay? So we got to do an analysis. Is it better to pay some money at tax up front to save several times money down the road? Or, what are we going to do? And once he's gone, we got to consider Emma's tax situation and his kid's situation. And that, when we're trying to figure out how much money to move from pre-tax, should we do that much? Or is it going to affect his kids more if we don't? We just need to look at the entire situation of the whole family to get the best outcome.
Julie, have you had client interactions where the entire family actually got involved? In other words, the people that came initially for the consultation and the heirs as well, to just kind of sit down and plot how everything is going to go?
That does happen sometimes. There's nothing wrong with getting your heirs involved just because, especially in the case of a very large IRA or pre-tax account, because, letting them know what's up front before it happens can be really helpful in their own planning, especially if the parent or the owner of that pre-tax account hasn't or isn't going to use any of that money. So ultimately, you have to plan for the lifetime of the owner of the account, but you still can keep a mind towards how do we prepare for the future? How do we mitigate tax as much as possible for the heirs?
Pat, do you find that when people are coming to you for the tax planning portion, and in a situation like this, I mean, you've got a sizable traditional IRA that no taxes have been paid on, and when it is distributed upon the owner's death, that those proceeds have to be distributed within 10 years. Does that come as a shock to people? Do they tend to not realize that they have a very short window per se?
Yeah, because that law just changed. It used to be you could stretch it out over your lifetime, but now and starting in 2020, you have to start taking it over 10 years if you're not a spouse, okay? So, yeah, that is a big shock to people. And like we had in another segment, some people, when they get the money, they want to take it out right away. Well, that's not a good thing to do most of the time.
Right.
So,
and unless it's a direct rollover, it counts as taxable money, right?
that's right. So it's good to have the heirs involved to know what they need to do when they do inherit the money.
Devin, from the estate planning side of things, when clients are putting things together, do you find it's common to have other family members get involved in the actual planning?
Yeah, I do find that it's common. The law that we're all referring to is the Secure Act that was just recently changed and updated this for everyone. And yeah, having everyone involved is important. Usually your spouse is going to be what's called a designated eligible beneficiary, and then your kids are going to be just the regular eligible beneficiaries, and so that's why the 10-year rule applies to them, because they're a level down, and the spouse is included with the current owner of the account, and so that's why it's a good idea to have everyone involved on that situation.
How often do you, as the estate planning attorney, let's say it's an initial consultation with you, they haven't met with the rest of the team, how often do you refer them back to the tax department and say you might want to have another set of eyes on this?
I mean, it happened to me just the other day. I had a lady come in and she wanted tax advice on this exact situation. I said, I can't give you the ins and outs of that. I can give you a lot of the broad rules, but you're going to need to talk to one of our CPAs for the exact distributions on that.
And that's where having the whole team winds it all up into one tidy little package. If you're out there and you're watching and perhaps you have a financial advisor, perhaps you have an estate planning attorney or a CPA that helps you with tax planning, but are they all under one roof working together for your benefit? That's what we do at Market Advisory Group. It's the holistic approach to retirement planning. And if you'd like to set up a complimentary no obligation consultation, operators are standing by right now to take your call at 316-252-8707. That's all the time we have for this week. I'm Rick Everett, and on behalf of the entire team, we're reminding you that we're here to keep an eye on retirement.
Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific investment opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns are not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in the states where it is registered or excluded or exempt from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by security regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. Legal services are offered by Edelman Law Firm. Tax services offered by Market Tax Service. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not in any way refer to investment advisory products. Rates and guarantees provided by insurance products and annuities are subject to the financial strength of the issuing insurance company, not guaranteed by any bank or the FDIC. The guest commentators featured in the show are not investment advisor representatives of Foundations and do not provide advisory services. Market Advisory Group does have several investment advisor representatives that can provide such services. This is not endorsed or affiliated with any U.S. government agency, the Social Security Administration, or associated with any federal Medicare program. All rights reserved.